Hey Tone Base, this is Bill Kanengiser. I'm back, really happy to do a little workshop with you guys. Instead of talking about a specific piece or a specific technique, I just wanted to address kind of a larger subject, which is why is it so hard to play the guitar? Why is it so stressful on the left hand to get a good note without a buzz, without feeling like you're squeezing the heck out of the neck? And so I wanted to talk about a lot of the sort of the physical ways that it works, the kind of physics of it a little bit, and hopefully you'll get a few ideas about how to make your playing a little easier, a little more musical, and hopefully enjoyable. So one thing that I think is kind of universal with us guitar players is we tend to push the strings too hard and squeeze too hard. So, and this is because we don't want to buzz. No one wants to have this sound. It just hurts my ears even to hear that. Now, that being said, a really good technique that a lot of guitar methods encourage is the idea of getting in touch with how hard you need to play in order to not buzz and fooling around with it. So here's a real simple beginning exercise in it, and it's what they call the thunk buzz note technique, where you start with just having your finger resting on the string and you pluck it. All you get is a thunk. Thunk. Then you press it a little harder and you get a buzz. That's a nice buzz. And then you press it a little harder and you get a clean note. Well, it's still buzzing a little, so I'll press a little harder. Oh, that's a buzzy string. Let me go to a different. That's much better. So I'll do it again. So thunk, buzz, and then clean note. Okay, so that can be a really good way to just figure out, well, how hard do I need to press in order to get a clean note? And what I'll sometimes do is go backwards. I'll start with a really clean note and gradually, while I'm repeating the note, gradually releasing the amount of pressure that I'm pushing the string down with. And notice right when it begins to buzz. Right there. And then you press just a little bit more so that it doesn't buzz. And if you notice how hard you're pushing at that point, I bet that that's a lot lighter than you normally press the string. So that's a sort of a first kind of awareness exercise into, well, how hard do I need to press without making a buzz? Okay. Now, the thing that we have to then refine a little bit is, well, it kind of depends where in the fret you're pressing. And this is where a kind of idea about physics can come in a little bit, or leverage. So I've made this very ridiculous monochord fashioned at my own little hardware store workshop. It sounds great. It's as nice as any of these instruments behind me, for sure. Okay, so, but it kind of represents, okay, there's a plucking string at tension, here's various frets. Okay, so the thing that we have to realize is when you pluck the string, it sends a shock wave down the string. So if I move it here, you can see this shock wave go across. Okay, so when we fret, the job of the finger is to hold the string down against the fret so that the string doesn't bounce off of the fret, because the buzz sound is that shock wave for just a brief instant, just for a couple of cycles of the string's vibration, letting it slap against the other frets. So if I don't press this down very hard, it's sort of slapping. Can you see it lifting my finger up like that? So I have to do it firmly enough that it doesn't throw the string off. Well, one of the ideas here is that the shock wave is only at the beginning of the note. So essentially, the moment in any given note that we have to press really firmly is always at the beginning of the note, when the shock wave comes in. After that, we can relax the pressure a little bit. And it's that awareness of not pressing all the time in a note that's going to be one of the first things that really helps to save energy. So I can do that same exercise that I just did, where I start with a firm note, and now I'm going to, as it sustains, I'm going to gradually relax the pressure as it's ringing out, and to the point where it just starts to buzz. There. You hear that it... Okay, it's starting to buzz. Now if I pluck it again with the same volume, huge buzz, okay? So the thing is, you can somewhat relax the pressure after the beginning of the note. Now why is that a good thing to do? Well, when we press really, really hard against the string, it doesn't just tighten up our hands and make us grimace, but it actually tightens the string itself. And it makes it a lot harder to do, let's say, vibrato, which I talked about in my first tone-based video. Slight plug there. Okay, so the thing is, if I'm pressing really hard against the string, then when I try to do vibrato, the string is already tight, and it doesn't respond very well. But if I press it so it doesn't buzz, and then relax it a little bit, because the string is slightly slack, it's much more responsive to vibrato. It's also so much easier to go legato to the next note if the finger that I'm pressing with is relaxed a little bit, but if it's squeezed in all the way, it's almost like I have to go lift it up and then go to the next note. And you can see I'm slightly exaggerating how tight I am, right? But let's say, here's a piece you may know. So if we think about this melody, I want to fret this. I've got a buzzy E on this guitar right now, but that's okay. So I'm going to play this note, and as it's ringing out, I'm going to just relax it a little bit. Now, if I relax it too much, oops. Okay, so that's too far. But if I don't relax it at all, there's just a stiffness to it. And you might have noticed when I shifted 3 to 3, when I was pressing down all the way, there was a pretty loud squeak. So listen to, I'm pressing down, squeak. And people say, God, why do I have squeak so much? Well, I think part of the reason people squeak is because they're pressing too hard before a slide. But if I relax it, and I feel like I'm just sort of softening the string. And what it allows you to do then is to be more musical with the note. You can add vibrato to it. You can let the note bloom a little bit. And a number of teachers who I respect greatly, of course Pepe Romero, but I'm thinking of 2 other classes I witnessed recently, Pavel Steidl and Alvaro Pierre, both said the same thing. They said, a lot of our tone is in the left hand. A lot of the tone is in what we do with the note after we pluck it. And it's this sensitivity to how hard we're pressing that's going to allow the note to bloom. And I don't know, I feel like even without vibrato, I can hear more sustain, more resonance on a note that I don't press as hard. Maybe it's too subtle for video, I don't know. But if I press this versus, I don't know if it sounds different or not. I certainly look different when I'm exaggerating a little bit. Okay, so this is a kind of way to not only save energy, but to really feel how much pressure we're putting underneath the string. Okay, but I also wanted to talk about one other important element. Let me fool around with my little interesting device here. Let me move this down. Bungee cords from hell. Okay, here we go. Now, so I found this is kind of cool, this little teeny weeny bungee cord. And I wanted to show you this for another reason, which is one other thing that makes it much easier or harder to fret a note cleanly isn't just how hard we press, but where in the fret we press. And I would say a lot of guitar players, you know, we almost treat the place that we press our finger in the fret as if we were playing a piano. It's like, okay, I'm hitting the key, blah, just like it's this thing that I just press down. But, you know, this isn't a key, it's a flexible thing that's being pressed against a rigid barrier. And it's just the law of physics that the farther away you are from the fulcrum point, the more pressure you need of downward trajectory. So we agree that the function of pressing is to hold the string so that it doesn't bounce up when we have the shock wave. Okay. Well, the closer I am to the fret, the more efficiently it holds the string against the fret. The farther away I go, the harder I need to push to get the same amount of energy. And sometimes I'll see guitar players way in the back of the fret, like way away from it. Now, obviously, if you're too far over the fret and you're actually on the fret, then you'll get a kind of pizzicato. That's actually a special technique that we can use. So let me just demonstrate this first. So here I am, like right up against the fret. Let me do it on the third string. So sometimes I'll wet my fingers so I can slide it around. So I'm playing on the third string right up against the fret, and I'm going to keep plucking the same volume and not press any harder, but I'm just going to move my finger down in the fret, essentially lowering that fulcrum of the string. So the farther away I get to the fret, the more I start buzzing. That's pretty horrible. Now I'm way back in the fret, and to play this note clean without a buzz, I have to really press. In fact, I'm pressing so hard that I'm actually making the pitch of the string go up, right? So the idea is, if you're close enough to the fret, but not on top of it, that is the most efficient use of your energy. Now, as I mentioned before, if you're actually on top of the fret, then a little piece of my flesh of my finger is actually damping the string, so you get this very cool effect that is used sometimes. It's what we call a left-hand pizzicato, which is kind of cool because you can do pizzicato tasto. It's also a very good technique exercise because you have to land very accurately right on top of the fret. But that's a special technique. Okay, so let me show you this a little bit, which is, so what I just showed. Oh, if we're close enough, then it's very efficient. Another thing I wanted to point out is if you play right in the middle of the fret, and let's say your finger actually touches the fretboard when you're pressing down. Like right now, you can see the string is on this as the fretboard, this thing. Okay. Once your finger is touching the fretboard, you can't push any farther, or any harder. And so if I were buzzing at this point, I'm buzzing, I'll just push harder. Well, I'm not moving the string anymore. I'm just pressing against this piece of wood, right? So that's another reason why always being a little closer is better. If I press straight down, flush against the finger, right in the middle, right now I'm actually pressing on the fretboard. And if I move a little closer, I can feel the string going up at an angle on the right side of my finger. And when I'm able to do that, that's when I can feel the softness of the string, as I mentioned before, and feel this, like that's where the vibrato and the legato feeling comes. As opposed to, and you can see, maybe I'm exaggerating it, but you can see how the whole attitude of my left hand changes when I'm pressing like this instead of, there's a kind of softness in between. To me, this is like this undefined and subtle difference between really legato, really lyrical playing and kind of more mechanical, heavy playing. So I think it's a very important thing to be aware of. Now, we've talked mostly about like how much energy the fingers are applying against the string, but there's some other really important like physical or leverage ideas going on here that I think I really wanted to highlight. And one of the things is that, let me get this little model that I made. I went to an art supply store today and made this. Isn't this nice? Sounds great. I think we should hang it up right there, right next to the Conte Hernandez. Yeah, I think so. Okay, why did I make this? Okay, here's the thing. Let's say I was a pianist and I wanted to hit a big chord on the piano. And I went, boom, right? Well, a piano is a pretty rigid, immovable object, isn't it? So every ounce of energy that I put into the piano keys goes into moving the hammers, which goes into hitting the strings, right? The piano doesn't move. Now imagine if you had a piano that is on a trampoline. And so when I go like this, boom, the whole piano goes boom, and moves around. Okay? Then part of the energy that I would use to hit the chord would go into moving the piano itself. That wouldn't be very good, would it? And I could see a pianist who said, oh, I need to get more power out of this chord. I know what I'll do. I'll grab the bottom of the piano keyboard with my thumb and squeeze it like this between my fingers. That's how I'll do it. Okay. Well, the funny thing is the guitar, to some extent, is kind of like that piano on the trampoline. And the idea is that when we push down here, when we apply pressure, there's a tendency for the whole guitar to move a little bit. And I made this so you can see it moving, right? Pretty good. Okay, so especially, let's say, like a big bar chord or slurs. Okay, so we have to stabilize this part of the guitar. It's kind of like a seesaw in a way. So when there's downward pressure here, we have to compensate with keeping it from moving on this side. Now, you don't need very much heavy pressure to keep it from moving, just a little bit. The interesting thing is, just like in a seesaw, when you have downward pressure here, all of that weight is delivered right to the middle, to where the middle of the seesaw is resting on the ground. Okay, you're probably completely confused now. Okay, on the guitar. So, let's say that I don't stabilize this side of the guitar at all, and I go, oh, well, it's moving around, right? Okay, so the only way that I can keep the guitar from moving around is to squeeze it as hard as I can between my thumb and my fingers. Okay, there, it didn't move at all. Okay, that's how most guitar players play, with a really clampy squeeze between the thumb and the fingers. And that's how we learn how to play. The idea, though, is that if we use the natural leverage that's available to us, the fact that the guitar is like a seesaw, and downward pressure here is resisted by pressure here, and the weight goes in the middle. The weight goes in the middle, which is where it's resting kind of against my chest. Of course, it's resting also on my legs, but mostly on my chest. And when I apply pressure here, I gently resist it here, kind of like, Pepe always used to talk about a can I do it in Pepe's voice? It's like hugging the guitar. And there's this feeling of hugging that connects the arms. So they pull in together, so I get this. I get counterbalance on this arm. Now, I would say that I'm not encouraging anyone to clamp down with the right arm to hold the guitar very rigidly. That is not at all what I'm asking. You really need the tiniest amount of pressure, like I'm just doing it with my fingertip, just to resist this. So you can see keeping the guitar stable enough so that it doesn't move when you do this. If you do it right, you'll notice that I can do this bar chord without even pressing my thumb down. I'm not even using my thumb. And there's no problem, I'm not buzzing at all. Because I'm counterbalancing the weight. Now, if I don't counterbalance it, there's no way I can do it. I have to do it all with the squeezing of the thumb. And this overall attitude of the left hand, this is what we build into our playing that doesn't allow us to have that fine gradation of pressure that doesn't allow us to do all the things I talked about at the beginning of this little workshop. You know, the relaxing it just enough or sliding it around, you know. So if our default is squeeze, right, then it's going to be a lot harder to feel all this stuff. But what I would encourage you guys is to start feeling the counterbalance. And I think I was sort of doing a little bit of the Villalobos before, showing you the vibrato and stuff. Well, this section is, I think, a really good example of where you can use this. And so I'm very deliberately, like, having my arms work sort of together. I almost feel like my arms are connecting together between my shoulder blades. I'm not pulling them like that, but I feel it, my arms connected together to my center. And that the guitar from here to here is this rigid, solid thing, and the strings are this flexible thing. And so it's very easy to hold these down because the strings are designed to be moved. And if I don't, as soon as I lift this up or allow this to move around, I have to press a lot harder. Now, I would also point out that the farther down you go, the farther, into first position, the more this leverage is going to really move. So I don't have to counterbalance very much here, but boy, here I really have to. So I'm really feeling. Here I'm putting a pretty good amount of weight. Good. Okay. So, and of course, if you combine that with the other stuff we talked about, that you really need the pressure when you first hit the note, and it can relax instead of just squeezing the entire time. And I would say a lot of guitar players have the problem of stamina. It's like you're doing some long piece, especially if it's got a bar. People are doing this, that piece. It's like I feel like my hand's gonna fall off. Well, it's like holding a tennis ball and squeezing it as hard as you can for 3.5 minutes, and after a while, your hand just is gonna give out, right? If the squeeze between thumb and finger is the primary thing that's holding the strings against the fret, you're going to get tired. And it's not a matter of building up the strength. It's that you're using your strength inefficiently. So understanding how the whole body can work to make this all easier for us is something that can really help. One sort of final thing about this that I think is often overlooked, which is the idea that the right hand can really help the left hand make things easier. And if I'll use this thing again. So, you know, depending on the action of your guitar, the action's not so good on this guitar. It's about, so an inch off. This would be kind of hard. Okay, but the thing is, you know, the string is set at a certain distance from the frets when it's at rest, right? And so your left hand finger has to take the string all the way from its point of rest against the fret, and press it down hard enough, you know, as we discussed before. Okay, so, and that's fine. That's what it does. Sometimes when we have to go from note to note, we'll actually hear this little click sound of the string being pushed against the fret. Okay, now the thing is, when the right hand moves the string, it can actually move the string closer to the fret a little bit in advance. So instead of having to push all the way down from the string completely at rest against the fret, if the right hand gets it halfway or so, a little closer, then the left hand has much less work to do to hold the string down. And then when I go to the next note, let's say I'm going, almost dropped this thing. Let's say I'm going from this beautiful note to this beautiful note. Now, what I did was, right before I lifted up, my right hand pushed the string down. So when I lifted up, it didn't go all the way back up. It went just a little of the ways up. So then pressing here was not nearly as hard. And especially, let's say, jumping to a higher position. See that? Like, whoa, that's a long way to go. Much less distance to travel. Not just distance to travel, but much less tension of the string to overcome. So I'll just show you that. Let's say I have to play this note, and if I have to go all the way down, you hear that little back buzz. But if my right hand gently pushes the string down a little bit, a really good way to do this is if you line your line of sight up. I close one eye so that I can only see the sixth string. Like, all the other strings are kind of hidden behind it. And when I push my thumb down, I can see in this case, the fifth string appearing underneath the level of the other strings. So, and I can see it's a lot closer, just like I was doing here. And then I've only got this far to go to hold the string down. And then when I go to the next note, I'm not going to let the string bounce all the way up and have to push it back down again. Just as I start lifting, my right hand keeps it down and then relaxes it. So in a sense, when I'm playing, the string stays closer to the string all the time, either by the left hand holding it down or the right hand lifting it up. And not having to go. So a really nice spot to show that is, I guess this is an example of diminishing returns here. So this spot, see here I'm allowing the strings to bounce back, and it's a lot of energy to get them back down. But if I very carefully, my right hand, as I lift up, is holding the strings down. It's so much easier. And if I combine that with the other aspects that I've discussed, like once I hit the note, allowing the pressure to release a little bit, placing my fingers right up against the fret and not being behind the frets, it's so much easier than if I did this. I don't know if you can see like how tense my hand is when I'm doing that. So the idea is, overall, these little details of how we're holding the string against the fret, when, where, and how we're preparing it, it can make the difference between like guitar playing being really difficult or being really easy. And it can make the difference between a melody being really lyrical and sweet or being sort of cold and clinical. It's my favorite Pepe Romero quote of all time, but he said, "To play the guitar well is easy. To play it badly is very difficult." So the idea is the more energy you use, the more energy you waste, it makes it so much harder, it makes it feel worse, and it actually makes it less musical. So I hope you enjoyed this latest buzz on guitar playing.